Thank you for choosing the JL Audio Fathom in-wall subwoofer system, also known as the IWS. This video can be used as a guide for ordering and installing an IWS system in either wood or metal 16-inch on-center stud construction applications. Let's begin with the ordering process. The IWS system is available in two configurations. System 1 consists of a 1000 watt amplifier, one subwoofer, one enclosure, and a speaker grille assembly plus all mounting hardware. System 2 includes a 2000 watt amplifier, two subwoofers, two enclosures, and two grilles with all mounting hardware. In this video, we'll illustrate how to install a single enclosure, subwoofer, and grille assembly, but keep in mind installation is the same for either system. Every aspect of the IWS system has been carefully engineered with an understanding of not only audio-related obstacles, such as vibrations and sonic performance, but also construction-related conditions, such as unsecured job sites and variances in building methods and materials. As a result, you'll need to gather a few pieces of info before ordering your IWS system. This will allow you to order your system in stages, so you can bring only the necessary items to the job site for each particular stage. After selecting either a System 1 or a System 2, you need to determine the type of construction used in your installation. And since construction materials vary, you'll need to measure the actual stud dimensions before calling JL Audio to order the enclosure. Walls constructed using 2x4 studs use an enclosure known as the A box. Depending on stud dimensions, there are three variations of this enclosure. Walls constructed using 2x6 studs will use the enclosure known as the B box. Once again, depending on stud dimensions, there are two variations for this enclosure available. All IWS enclosures are designed to make soft contact with the drywall through strategically placed spacers and pads on both sides of the enclosure. So ordering the correct enclosure will ensure a proper fit and optimum sonic performance from your IWS system. The spacers and pads are critical for proper installation and should not be modified in any way. Attempting to install the wrong enclosure will lead to degraded performance, as well as rattles and vibrations that can be very difficult to remedy. When you're ready to order the grille assembly, you'll need to specify the quantity. You would order 1 for a System 1 or 2 for a System 2. Grille assemblies are available in 3 depth sizes to fit a range of drywall thicknesses. You'll also need to specify the thickness of the drywall used with your installation. When it's time to order the amplifier, you'll need to specify if you're installing a System 1 or a System 2, and if your installation uses 120 volt or 240 volt power. Each amplifier uses specific equalization curves for each enclosure type, so you'll also need to specify if you installed the A box for 2x4 construction or the B box for 2x6 construction. The enclosure package includes necessary hardware to complete the installation, including the following: one go gauge measuring 14 3/8 inches wide, one mounting bracket assembly with centering template, 50 feet of energy-absorbing adhesive foam gasket strip, 50 number 8 by 1 1/4 inch wafer head screws, 3 cable ties, one hanging rod, either for the A box or the B box, and one enclosure with pre-attached drywall template. Some of the tools needed for the installation include a tape measure that's at least 100 inches in length, a cordless drill, a number 2 Phillips head bit, drill bits or unibit, pliers, permanent marker, wire strippers, wire cutters, utility knife, safety glasses, and enrolling a friend or coworker to assist would be helpful. To begin, you'll first need to prepare the work area. Most installations will be with new construction. However, you can also perform the installation in pre-existing construction by opening a stud bay. If the latter is the case, we recommend using masking tape and a drop cloth to protect the interior from construction debris. Inspect the stud bay to ensure that you have at least 93 5/8 inches of unobstructed height inside the cavity. The stud should be plumb and parallel without any twisting or bowing. The IWS enclosure is intended to hang freely inside the stud bay, so anything coming into contact with it can lead to rattles and vibration that cannot be corrected once the drywall is installed. If your stud bay has any obstructions, such as conduits or cross members, you'll need to work with your general contractor to discuss either moving the obstacles or choosing a different stud bay. A go gauge is provided to ensure that the minimum width required is maintained. Insert the go gauge into the bottom of the wall cavity and slowly raise it to the top. The width of the studs throughout the stud bay should be no less than 14 3/8 inches wide and no greater than 14 7/8 inches wide. If at any point the gauge binds or does not fit, consult with your general contractor to safely modify or move the studs to allow for the proper clearance. Use a tape measure to verify that the maximum width does not exceed 14 7/8 inches. Later in the installation, the grille tray will mount to the studs, so it's important to ensure that they line up properly. Once you've verified that the stud bay meets the size requirements, measure up from an unfinished floor to 90 1/2 inches and mark both stud faces. These marks will be used to align the mounting bracket centering template assembly. Using the hole in the mounting bracket as a guide, mark the top plate to drill a hole to route your speaker wire. It's a good idea to do this now because once the mounting bracket is secured in place, this area will be difficult to access. You may also route the wire out either stud to an adjacent stud bay. When working with metal stud construction, make sure any drilled holes are clear of burrs or sharp edges. Position the centering template on the marks made on the stud faces and partially screw 2 screws into the slotted openings. Make sure to position the screws near the center of the slotted openings because the bracket needs to be able to shift left and right within the stud bay. Using the stepped windows, adjust the bracket until it's centered on both sides between the studs. Then tighten the 2 screws the rest of the way. Next, screw 2 additional screws in the remaining holes to secure the mounting bracket in place. With the mounting bracket centered, slide each L bracket until the foam padding is firmly pressed against the inside of each stud. Secure it in place by using 6 screws in each L bracket. Use 2 screws to lock the mounting bracket in place and tighten the 2 pre-installed sliding screws in place as well. You can now remove all 7 screws along the front of the centering template. The template is no longer needed and can be recycled. Next, apply the foam strip to all faces within the cavity by removing the backing and pressing the foam strip firmly in place. Trim the edges using a utility knife. The foam will reduce the likelihood of rattles and vibrations once the drywall is in place. This is especially important with metal stud construction. It's now time to hang the enclosure within the wall cavity. Place one end of the hanging rod into the enclosure socket and with the help of another person, lift the enclosure into the stud bay and position the other end of the hanging rod into the mounting bracket socket. Once in place, check to make sure the enclosure is not making hard contact with anything except the hanging rod. The enclosure should float freely within the stud bay. Once hung, check to make sure that the gap on either side of the enclosure is equal before securing the drywall template to the studs. The drywall template is used to temporarily secure the enclosure in the stud bay while also providing a hard edge for the surrounding drywall installation. Ideally, the gap between the template and the actual drywall should be 1/8 of an inch or less. Secure the drywall template using 8 screws through the pre-drilled holes into the stud faces. The final step before the drywall installation is to run wires down to the enclosure. Feed your wire through the hole you drilled earlier in the installation and remove the outer jacketing to expose the individual wires. Although the hanging rod is padded to reduce vibrations, the wire jacketing should remain in place as far down the hanging rod as possible. Secure the jacketed portion to the rod using the supplied cable ties. Observing correct polarity, remove the insulation from the individual wires and connect them to the terminals located on the top of the enclosure. To further reduce chances of noise and vibration, position the individual wires so they do not come into contact with other parts of the system. You may now have the drywall installed. With the drywall installed, make sure the gap around the drywall template is 1/8 of an inch or less. The grille frame can hide small gaps, but you'll need to fill in larger spaces or contact your drywall team. The drywall template is secured from behind with 4 pins. Remove the screws from the front of the drywall template, pull forward to remove it from the enclosure. it can be difficult to pull the template straight out. You may find it easier to partially screw 2 screws in the center area of the template to use as a grip as you pull it forward. If any pins remain attached to the front of the enclosure, simply remove them using a pair of pliers. Once removed, the drywall template and pins can be recycled. With the drywall template removed, insert the grille tray into the opening. Make sure it is level and that the mounting holes are aligned with the stud faces on either side. Secure the grille tray in place using the screws that were supplied with the grille. The inner portion of the grille tray should fit into the woofer's mounting area in the enclosure. The woofer will mount directly through this section and into the front of the enclosure. This will channel all of the woofer's energy through the grille opening while ensuring that the enclosure remains decoupled from the wall. You're now ready to install the woofer. Reach into the enclosure to locate each wire secured by an elastic band. These bands will keep the wires in place, minimizing any possibility of vibrations, and should not be removed. Position the woofer with the JL Audio logo upright and connect each wire to its terminal. Using the supplied screws, mount the woofer to the inner section of the grille tray. The holes on the speaker frame should line up with the holes on the inner rubber section. You'll notice 2 contact points above the woofer. These terminals can be used with the amplifier during the A.R.O calibration process. Refer to the owner's manual for more information about the A.R.O process. The grille assembly includes a plastic paint guard to protect the woofer from overspray during painting. The grille frame and the metal mesh grille should be painted separately to prevent them from sticking together. Once the system has been calibrated, insert the painted grille into the grille tray, making sure the notches in the mesh material line up with the screws that hold the grille tray in place. This completes the installation process for the Fathom IWS System 1 enclosure. If you're installing a System 2, you'll simply need to repeat the same process for the second enclosure.